Why aren't neighbors helping Palestine? Hi. Fairly ignorant, so inquiring here as I can't seem to find answers and keen on people's views. Answers to this. Realistically, as disguised as it is, Israel versus Palestine is very much a racial battle as much as it is territory. It is also why it has gathered so much friction with Islamic people across the world compared to other wars which have wars between the same race. My question is, why aren't Lebanon, Jordan and Egypt, all Islamic nations, providing a safe haven for Palestinians as Poland and Europe did for Ukraine? Why isn't this being raised, and why aren't these countries being as boycotted as the UK and US? Looking for education and reasoning. Jordan is not able to help. They took in millions of Syrian refugees in addition to the millions of Palestinian refugees they already have. The country is on the verge of breaking already. You can't ask any more from them. Israel versus Palestine is very much a racial battle as much as it is territory. And what races would those be? This is not a racial conflict. It doesn't fit in the neat little box of American racial politics. Israelis are not of a single race, and the majority of Israelis share a similar racial background to Palestinians. This is an ethnic, religious, and political conflict. Race has nothing to do with it. This is not a racial battle at all. Search up Black September. The last time Jordan took in Palestinians, they attempted a coup and assassinated the president. In Lebanon, Palestinians caused their civil war in 1975. They were armed prior to the war and had their own militias and mafia-like activity. Tried to take over the country with Muslim militias, and killed Lebanese people. In Egypt, they attempted to assassinate the president. 2. Palestinians make horrible house guests. There's a history of Palestinian refugees fleeing from Gaza and then not being allowed to return. So there's a reluctance to take a large number of refugees who will essentially become the responsibility of the host nation forever. Accepting refugees requires heavy logistics of their basic needs and a security apparatus to avoid threats from entering. They have had experience with those issues in the past with Palestinian refugees. The leaders don't care enough about them to put that effort in. Neighboring countries already have sizable Palestinian populations. They did in the past, and Palestinians thank them by starting civil wars. Because they don't want the terror inside their borders. The Palestinians have bitten every hand that has tried to help them. From their attempted coup in Jordan to destabilizing Lebanon, none of the Arab nations will take them in. It's a geopolitical issue for them. Their past with Palestinian refugees haven't been great, hence most of the Arabs aren't doing anything except raise the issue at global platforms. The unfortunate repercussions from the Israel-Hamas war, as we have seen before, is that it will lead to radicalization of a big group of people, who will then carry out violent acts on major cities like Paris and London because of their support. It has been my observation that the Arab world does not care about Palestine beyond them being martyrs and a rallying point for an anti-Israeli platform. One of the reason I think is it would Palestinian citizens were to migrate en masse, then the Palestinian cause is dead looks more improbable. A bad look for any Islamist leader. Because they know what once Palestinians leave they won't be allowed to return. And Israel would annex Gaza. They're a necessary inconvenience. And I don't mean that in a rude way. They're afraid that once they let the Palestinians in, Israel won't allow them to come back and will occupy the territory with Jewish settlers. If they don't allow Palestinians in, then Israel won't be able to occupy the territory since they have to deal with the remaining Palestinian population somehow. My question is, why aren't Lebanon, Jordan and Egypt, all Islamic nations, providing a safe haven for Palestinians as Poland and Europe did for Ukraine? There are multiple reasons for this, but a big one is it would support Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign. If Egypt were to open their border with Gaza and let in all the people fleeing, they'd have to establish essentially a refugee camp in the desert and provide for possibly millions of Palestinians who may never be let back into Gaza. Egypt will have facilitated the mass displacement of Palestinians from their ancestral homeland. They are liabilities to the host countries. They're liabilities to Israel, just like how they're liabilities to Egypt. Egyptian here. We don't help them because our governments are American puppets. Jordanian previous king was declared a traitor. Sisi policies are always in favor of Israel and his arch rivals in Egypt, who he massacred. Muslim Brotherhood are the godfathers of Hamas. Lebanon is in shambles and eternal civil war. Gulf leaders are American puppets. Syrian leader is a POS and Iraq is an Iranian versus American puppet. Also, Palestinians that live in Gaza don't want to leave. Even if they die, it's their land and they'll live and die there. From the Israeli side, it's not racial or territory. We have Muslims in the army and have our land. With clear boards, the only that's supporting Hamas, its terror organizations. Most of the countries in the Middle East broken because the terror organizations that Iran support and sponsor them, BTW. The Palestinian Authority don't recognize Hamas after 2007, that Hamas executed government officials and took over Gaza. Egypt does not want to help because Hamas literally is a derivative of Muslim Brotherhood and has history of attacking them as well. Because many of them have tried to fight Israel before and lost. Why aren't the neighbors willing to enforce security in Gaza so the Palestinians can build a productive economy and improve their lives? Letting extremists like Hamas run the place means all the resources get put into military forces and incur retaliation from Israelis. Israel would be willing to allow a more normal flow of goods into Gaza if the majority of it didn't get put into building up for attacks across the border. My question is, why aren't Lebanon, Jordan and Egypt, all Islamic nations, providing a safe haven for Palestinians as Poland and Europe did for Ukraine? Because last time they did in 1948, and the Palestinian refugees are still there. In practice, it was just going along with the Israeli ethnic cleansing. Why doesn't Saudi Arabia build the Palestinians a new city on the shores of the Red Sea, with palm trees and shade streets, with schools and parks? It would be a far better investment than their current NEOM. Give them jobs building the city. Give them jobs working in the city. Let the children grow up and the old to grow old. That would be a brotherly thing to do. Geopolitical and internal politics BS. Also, they don't want more refugees, but shouting is a good venting mechanism, and it's a good way to avert the eyes from internal struggle. Basically a good dog whistle. In part, they don't want the Palestinians to leave the Gaza Strip because they fear they wouldn't be able to come back and that Israel could annex the Gaza Strip. They don't want a new Nakba. 1. Ethnic, not racial. 2. They started a war in every country they were ever in. Because Palestinians are not the helpless victims that American media likes to depict them as. They have turned down numerous peace plans and two-state solutions, even ones proposed by Arab states. They elected leaders who campaigned on the idea of genocide. Their refugees turn into terrorists. I am not saying all Palestine is like this, but almost 50 chose to elect Hamas when they were campaigning on the ideas of genocide. Edit had a fact wrong.